Welcome to the Reforming Men podcast, where we dive into the rich and challenging and often misunderstood waters of biblical masculinity. This isn't just another podcast. It's a call to men to step into the roles that God has given them with purpose and with strength. We're here to wrestle with hard truths and chart a course to the often overlooked terrain of masculine piety. Not the kind of masculinity that the world tries to sell you, not the kind that fades when tested, but the kind of masculinity that's rooted in the scriptures and shaped by the timeless and unyielding wisdom of the Westminster Standards. Maybe as you're listening, you're laboring at work right now with sweat on your brow. Maybe you're in the gym straining under the weights that you're lifting. Or maybe you're all alone during a quiet morning at home with a cup of coffee in your hand before the day begins. Wherever you are and whatever you're doing, know that you're not here by accident. This podcast is for you. It's for the man who wants to live with purpose, who wants to love his wife and his children, and lead his church with strength and with humility. And to the women listening, we want you to know that we see you too. Maybe you're praying for your husband. Maybe you're wondering what kind of man you want to marry in the future. Or maybe you're thinking about the kind of men, the kind of elders that you want to sit under in the local church. Well, we're glad you're here too. This podcast is for anyone who cares about what it means to be the kind of man that God has called men to be. And our mission is simple. Call men to a biblical masculinity. Not some cheap imitation of strength, not tired stereotypes of our culture that crumble under the pressure of the world. We're after real masculinity, the kind of manhood that holds steady in the storm, because it's anchored in the Redeemer, Jesus Christ our Lord. Welcome to the Reforming Men podcast. Well, welcome back to the Reforming Men podcast. Today I am joined by teaching elder Ken Wojnarowski. I'm sure I totally butchered that Polish last name. Sorry about that, Ken. But why don't you tell us a few things about yourself?
Hey, thanks for having me on. Yeah, Wojnarowski. Some people cough halfway through. That's fine too. I maintain that my last name has more vowels than a lot of Polish last names. So It's a little bit easier to sound out. Some of the ones I've met recently, there's a couple church planters in the PCA that are planting churches in Poland. And those last names are even hard for me.
Yeah.
So, glad to be here. Teaching elder in the PCA. I'm an associate pastor in Harrisburg, North Carolina. And I've been married going on 8 years, 3 kids, and just recently moved to the South. I am a historic Northerner Yankee from Chicago, and now I'm here in the South, and I never want to go back.
Yeah. It's funny. My dad was raised in small farming towns in central Illinois. He went to University of Illinois in Champaign. So we had a nice March Madness as a family. I think 2 of my uncles actually went to the Final Four game.
Wow.
They're all, most of my dad's side of the family eventually made their way south of the Mason-Dixon line. And I don't think my dad, I think once he had fried chicken and sweet tea and
some biscuits,
brisket and barbecue. I think he said, I'm never going back. So
never going back. No.
Yeah. So it's a great place to be.
You mentioned the Final Four. I would be remiss if I did not mention the fact that Michigan is the reigning champs, national champions in basketball and football. Go Blue.
Are you okay? So you're a Michigan fan?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Well, I guess when you grow up in Northern Illinois, Northwestern and NIU are not exactly football powerhouses. So unless you attend there or you've got family that attends there, you're probably not going to choose them as teams to root for. So,
no.
Yeah, Michigan was absolutely unstoppable this year. They were just far more physical and talented, and they're really well coached as well. So
that final game was terrible, though. I was at a pastor's conference, Twin Lakes, and we were watching the game, and man, we couldn't make a 3 to save our life. I think we made 1 out of 11, but free throws win games.
Yeah. Well, we saw that in the I was at a family kind of dinner outing during the Illinois UConn game, and you could just see it statistically. If Illinois just hit a couple of more threes, that was more on par with their typical average per game, and then they made their free throws, they would have been much closer to striking distance of winning the game in the end. But anyway, so we're here to talk about men of the covenant.
Yeah.
which I had no idea it even existed until you put it on my radar. So why don't you tell us what Men of the Covenant is?
Yeah, so Men of the Covenant is, interestingly enough, something that the PCA, back when it was founded, uh, you know, the first General Assembly happened, and they had a lot of recommendations for how churches are to go forward. Now, we're part of this new denomination, we're a new thing. Here's how to go forward. And one of the things they put forward, recommendation 9 from one of the I believe CDM maybe, or whatever CDM was at that point. Was that each congregation be encouraged to promote a local men's organization with a distinctly spiritual emphasis to be known as Men of the Covenant. And so that's where the name comes from. It was a PCA thing. The denomination said, "Hey, go and start a men's ministry. Call it this." I don't know many denominations that say, "Hey, everyone, go start a ministry, and here's your name for it."
Yeah.
Like, right? In the early '90s, non-denominational churches are coming up with crazy names for their youth ministry.
Yeah.
The Revolution, or the KFC Kids for Christ, or there's all these crazy names, and the PCA is like Men of the Covenant.
Yeah.
That's it.
That's encouraging. It seems like one of my critiques of us as Presbyterians is that we move, and it can be a bug and a feature at times of our system, is that we move so slowly. We're so reactionary. Prime example of this is our delay on having a study committee on artificial intelligence. And but it seems like if our fathers in the PCA were establishing this, giving this directive in the 1970s, they were kind of ahead of the game, in terms of men's ministry, and you can also kind of see that name, that Men of the Covenant, that is not on brand for kind of the evangelical goofiness that we see in the late 80s and the mid 90s when it comes to men's ministries and attempts to minister to men. It kind of seems like a lot of churches, and I think the PCA is here now, again, it's just a consequence of ignoring the council of fathers, right? Now we're trying to figure out, well, how do we minister to men?
Right.
So it sounds like Men of the Covenant isn't actually starting something new. It's almost like, it's almost like, oh, we found the law. Look, we found, recovering this whole thing, like we've rediscovered.
Yeah, like Josiah, right?
Yeah.
Josiah finds the book of the law in the temple. Well, somebody finds it and brings it to him, but and what does Josiah do? He renews the covenant.
Yeah.
And then he goes on a spree throughout the countryside and is just destroying everything. It's great.
Yeah.
But it's essentially just like that. Other than I'm not Josiah, and the other teaching elders who I'm working with are not Josiah. But we've recognized that this has been baked in from the foundation since the beginning, that we are to do real men's ministry. And if you connect that with the covenantal aspect, a lot of churches will state in their bulletins that this is a service of covenant renewal.
Yeah.
Right? That when we come together every Lord's Day, we are renewing the covenant in a sense. And so essentially we are to be men of the covenant.
Yeah.
That's what we're called to be. And so fast forward, many years later, and the PCA, obviously I think we're doing really well. We're thriving in many ways, shapes, and forms. However, if you take a look at the average church, they have a great women's ministry, they have a great kids ministry, but oftentimes, it's not all of them, but oftentimes it's the men's ministry that's suffering.
Yeah.
And, you throw together a clay pigeon shooting event, you throw together a barbecue event.
Yeah.
But what's not being thrown together is an event where they study the word or study some kind of word adjacent book and really fellowship meaningfully.
Yeah. Yeah. So tell us, what's the outline of a typical Men of the Covenant meeting when you got, when your church is gathering, when other churches are doing this? What does this look like?
Yeah. So each church is slightly different. I will say there are churches in the PCA that started a Men of the Covenant when the denomination was formed, and they are still going. And it's great. Second Presbyterian, second PCA down in Greenville, right? Where Rick Phillips is. They're doing a great job. We're working over there with them. They've got a Men of the Covenant that's been going strong. But each church can do what they want, right? The name is the PCA, what the PCA told us to do. But essentially what we're trying to do is say, hey, you don't have a men's ministry. Your men's ministry isn't great. Take this model and run with it, right? And it's a very simple model, right? Fellowship, prayer, singing, study.
Okay.
And also not officially part of the framework, but keep it succinct, right? If you're going to do a Saturday morning men's group meeting, there are a lot of guys that got to go to work, right? So if you're going to meet at 8 a.m., you got to be done by 9:15, right?
Yeah.
You got to keep it succinct, keep it focused, right? Men are very good at when we get on a topic we like, we can just talk and talk and talk. We need to keep it focused.
Yeah.
And then singing, right? You know, that one might be a little foreign to some guys when they hear why is singing important.
Yeah.
Well, if we read over all of the songs in the Bible, a majority of them are written by men and sung by men, right?
Right.
David was a manly man, and he wrote poetry, he wrote music, and they were sung.
Yeah.
And so as men, we need to recover singing as a manly thing.
Yeah. Particularly the Psalms. I mean, I can remember, I don't remember what year it was at General Assembly. I can't remember what was happening, if we were having technical difficulties or something, or what the break in the action was. But we just sang, I think, Psalm 5 a cappella.
Yes.
And it's like, you know, the sound of 2,000 men or close to 2,000 men singing a psalm with no accompaniment, I think is, it was very stirring, you know, and
Psalm 5 is special too. It's not like just like praise our God for he's great. It's thick, man.
Yeah, there's some imprecatory elements there, I believe.
There were,
and so I think the joke, one of the jokes I've heard about singing the songs a cappella is, you know, the greatest argument for exclusive psalmody without instruments is singing psalms without instruments. And the greatest argument against it is meeting exclusive psalmodists. But that certainly is, it certainly is true. You know, every time you gather in a room like that and you've got all these men singing a psalm together, it's certainly stirring, and there's nothing feminine or effeminate about it. And so yeah, I think that's great. It'd be, you know, I think in my own presbytery, it'd be wonderful to get several several churches together on a Saturday morning and you know, have 100 to 200 men sing a couple psalms and study the word together. I think that'd be incredibly enriching.
It really is. And now we've when I got here at my church now, we rebranded and restarted our men's ministry. They're faithful brothers who are doing a great job, but it started to kind of spin off. There was some kind of more broader discussions. And so when I was talking with some of the guys who were kind of leading it, I said, hey, I'd really like to take this over and work with y'all to have a focused study. And that's the key. You can study the Bible. If your church's men's ministry is going well and everything's going really well there with studying the Bible, please do that. But one of the problems that we have seen over the years as far as men's ministry goes is that the pastor is often doing everything and maybe doesn't have the capability to lead a men's ministry. Maybe a lay person needs to step up. And when it comes to teaching the Bible, I think sometimes lay people can get a little nervous, and that's totally understandable, right? You have a pastor who goes to seminary, who's studying the Bible full time. Totally get it. However, lay people should work on that.
Yeah.
But what if instead of saying, hey, we're going to do a book study of the Bible through 1 Samuel, we pick up a book like, say, The Redeemed Man by Joel Beakey. This book here, The Redeemed Man, right? It's a great masculinity, manhood book written from various authors, viewpoints, and things like that. Different men, Rick Phillips. Basically, though, you're going to be studying the scripture that is put forward in that book and focused on how to be men of God, right? So open with scripture, pray, definitely. This is more accessible for a lay person to step in and say, hey, I can lead the meeting, and we're going to read a chapter a month, and we're going to talk about it. And if you could do any books you want, but we are recommending this book because it has 24-ish chapters. If you do one chapter a month, that's 2 years of content that you have. And each chapter is like 10 pages, 12 pages, totally digestible. And with this framework, you can start having real conversations in your church with your men. You can hold each other accountable. That's what the prayer time is for. You can have prayer requests and things like that. But then the other aspect that we recommend is, why not invite your young boys, right? Say 7-year-old and up sons. Why not invite your young boys, have them follow in their father's footsteps, learn to sing, learn how to study, learn how to compose themselves in a room full of men. And one of the things I've seen that's kind of interesting, we have a family here where the father has to work on Saturdays. He has to, in order for the family to be able to survive, they need to work. He needs to work. And so his wife drops his son off at the meeting every month. And that son sits amongst the men and learns and sings. And it's a wonderful thing because when we take baptism vows, right? Now I know it's optional in the BCO whether or not the church takes vows to the child. In every church I've been a part of in the PCA, the church takes vows. I will help to raise this child. These people, these men are fulfilling their baptism vows to this child.
Yeah, that's right.
Right? It's amazing.
Yeah, no, you're speaking my language. We, at our church here in East Tennessee, we are intergenerational on purpose. We have no age division on Sunday morning and Sunday afternoon after potluck. We do second session, and the kids we're all together in basically like what's essentially a giant Sunday school kind of setting. And man, it really is wonderful to kind of see, the young men kind of grow up, and they're kind of on-ramping into adulthood. And two of my ruling elders are related by marriage, and so they have sons and grandsons in the church that are all part of their family. And so I was reflecting on this the other day. I'm in fellowship with 3 generations of men in my church, and
awesome.
There's times where I'm meeting for coffee or lunch with all these different guys that are related, and that's a really beautiful part of life that we often miss because of the way that church is often structured, and because we live in a very transient society. I don't know a single man outside of my uncles that my father grew up with.
Whoa.
And that's probably the truth for most of us these days. We don't. I'm not friends with any of the young men. That from the community that my father grew up in, right? Like, because we've all kind of moved around and been supplanted here and there from in God's providence. But so there's something beautiful about building relationships with these young guys now, who in 15 years are going to be adults with families of their own, and I'll be 15 years older. But I'm sure it's the same for you as it is for me. As we all get older, that the age gap of those friendships and those mentorship relationships, it becomes less important,
right?
And so these young men are being on-ramped into friendship. Yep. They're growing into that, into the brotherhood. And this Men of the Covenant sounds like a wonderful kind of infrastructure to have in place in a church in order to be building that in. Because so often young men turn 18, 19, they go off to junior college or university or whatever, and even though they're in the same town or area, they're like, well, I guess I have to go find a church now. And it's like, dude, we baptized you here. Like, this is your church.
Yeah.
And I think that something like this helps instill in the covenant child's mind, I belong here. These are my people. I belong to them. They belong to me. And I can see how this would serve a lot of different needs in a local church.
100%. And really, if we're looking at men's ministry to be just, getting content to the men, right? That's the wrong view, right? Oh,
Yeah.
well, we got to have a men's ministry so the men have something too. No. What men's ministry needs to be is older men discipling younger men, right?
Yeah.
Younger men also caring for older men, teaching older men, because obviously the world's changing all the time.
Yep.
But essentially, your men's ministry should also be a training ground for future officers.
Yeah.
Right? Not everyone in the church is called to be an elder or a deacon, right? There are many honorable men who will serve in the church, not as an officer. However, I would rather have, say, a 7-year-old boy learn at the feet of these men, and then in 20 years, maybe a little more, or however long, be the next officer who've been learning at the feet of the current officers.
Yeah.
Right? That generational leadership there.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah, I know from listening to some other podcasts, I know that Jim McCarthy and some other guys they do coffee and Calvin, and I've been thinking about starting something like that. These groups of guys basically are meeting at 6 a.m., 6:30 in the morning once a week just to read through the institutes. And
great, let's do it.
Yeah, that's a that takes commitment. You're going to get out of bed an hour earlier than normal. And I'm just encouraged to know that there's so many guys out there that would want to do something like that.
Yeah.
But that's where you start to see kind of the next generation of elders be birthed. Ben Ratliff of Reforming Men fame, and also polity matters, and especially the preaching. I mean, he's involved in everything. I asked him, because I met a couple of his young ruling elders at GA. I was like, how in the world do you have millennial ruling elders? Like, how did you guys pull this off? And he said, basically once a week or once every other week, we had a fire pit and bourbon, and we went through the Westminster Confession of Faith. And I was like, great. That's, you're probably not going to get a bunch of guys just to, sit around and stare at each other and talk about their feelings, but they'll talk about the standards and sit around a fire pit and drink some bourbon. And so that there's lots of different ways to pull this off. But I think this is the way, this is the way forward in terms of training up the next generation of elders and deacons.
This is the way. The best thing that could have happened to the PCA was changing our logo a few years ago.
Yeah. It's funny. There was that controversy recently where we had, somebody who's not authorized to sell the logo on a lapel pin. And I just thought, people living in glass houses shouldn't be throwing stones. We might be infringing on one of Disney's biggest properties right now and, with our logo. So, but anyway,
no comment.
All that's above my pay grade, so I don't know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. It's interesting. I think there's and maybe this is changing, and I hope it is, but there's been this kind of idea that, ruling elders should really be retired. Right? Ruling elders should be in their, upper ages, retired, so they have more time to spend in the church and to make meetings and things like that. And really, that's just a tragedy to think that way. We will gladly bring on a teaching elder who's 27.
Yeah.
Right. And we'll give him the ability to expound the word and to shepherd the congregation. Yep. But we won't bring on a 27-year-old ruling elder.
Right.
In some cases. And really, if you have no 27-year-old ruling elders who are qualified, then you're not going to bring one on.
Right.
But if you start doing something like this and you're doing intentional men's ministry, I guarantee you're going to start finding ruling elders and deacons at younger ages.
Yeah.
And they got a family. Yeah, they're going to have to miss some meetings because of family stuff going on. But essentially, you want your officers to be a wide variety of ages, right? You want younger guys with a different perspective to be in on those decision making, because if you're all the same age and you all think the same way, you might be missing something. Yeah.
Yeah. Paul tells Timothy, don't let anybody despise you because of your youth. And if you think about it, if a man can, obviously we're a 2-office church, but we're functionally, let's be honest, 2.5. And
no comment.
Yeah. And if a man if we have men capable of becoming teaching elders at 27, 28, where they're
24.
where they're actually handling the word, it seems like it seems reasonable to say that somebody of that same age might be mature enough to be a ruling elder, where they don't have the burden of preparing lectures and sermons and homilies and other things. But anyway, that's just my thought process in it.
100%. It's important that our churches, recognize men who might be qualified. And one of the ways to do that is through regular, careful study. You put a group together of men who are going to study the confessions, right? Well, you start realizing, this guy is grasping it. Like, this guy is really a solid Presbyterian. He really agrees with the Westminster. We've had conversations about baptism. We've had conversations about the commandments. He's really in line. Oh, you know what? He's done a really good job of teaching his young children to sing and to pray. Yep. And the Bible. Like, maybe this man could be a good officer. Yeah. I wonder if the congregation would see that. Like, obviously, because it's a nomination process. But yeah, we should be seeing younger officers if we're doing our training correctly.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, tell us a little bit about Men of the Covenant. I know you have a website. What are the features of the website? How does that help serve the PCA and churches that are wanting to get involved in Men of the Covenant?
Yeah, so it's, again, any church can claim the name Men of the Covenant, right? If a church wants to claim that their men's ministry is the Men of the Covenant, they can do that, and they don't have to be connected with this formula at all. It's a PCA thing, right? The PCA said to do it, and you're welcome to do it. However, if you want to sign up, you go to our website, you want to sign up for updates, right? We are rolling out content that will aid in forming your men's ministry and discipling your men. So if you go to the website, you'll see we have recommended reading, right? You pick a topic, right? We're going to give you a good book that you can go with that topic. Hey, my men are actually really doing well with masculinity. We really need to study, sin, like in understanding sin better, right? The Mortification of Sin by John Owen. We want to talk about contentment, right? Jeremiah Burroughs, The Rare Jewel of Christian Contentment. Really, the Puritans. Just right. Read the Puritans. So we have that, right? Those are for everybody. However, if you sign up, what you're going to start getting soon is monthly newsletters in a sense, that will have discussion questions and content related to the redeemed man first.
Oh, nice.
And then, and as other books, as we get guys who are reading through them and developing that content. But you're also going to hopefully be getting lectures that your men can listen to. The first lecture series that we're putting forward is a lecture series companion to Dale Ralph Davis's commentary on Judges.
Nice.
So right now my church is teaching through that. We do our men's ministry the first Wednesday of the month, and we're going through Dale Ralph Davis's Judges, one chapter by chapter. And then we do our third Saturday of the month, and that's where we're doing the Redeemed Man.
Truly awesome. Yeah.
Yeah.
If you've never heard, Dale Ralph Davis filled my pulpit a year ago, and because he's right, he's over in Cookeville, where I went to school at Tennessee Tech University, and so he's a member of the PCA church there. And he came and filled the pulpit. He's 80 years old, and he got done preaching. I was like, I want to be that good at preaching when I'm 80. And then I thought, I want to be that good at preaching just at some point, at any time. He's really is gifted, and also just an amazing scholar. And I actually gave a copy of his commentary on Judges to this young barista at this coffee shop that I like to go to. She's I believe she's Roman Catholic, and she was talking about she's reading the Word a lot. And I was like, if you're reading your scriptures a lot, you're in danger of becoming Protestant, in a good way. But she said she, was reading through the Gospels, and then was really interested in reading through Judges. And so she had started doing that. And so I said, here's a commentary on, this is one of the best preachers. You can find sermons that are, like a lot of his sermons are basically the same as his commentaries. His commentaries, essentially his sermons in written and polished form. And so I gave her a copy of that book, and I think she really enjoyed it. So it's a winner. Anything by DRD is excellent, and so that's good. All his focus on the Bible series, and I have his little books on the Psalms as well. I mean, he's very accessible.
Yeah, he's great. I've not read anything bad by him, and he has a playful way
Oh
of
yeah,
using speech, especially you start talking about why did Israel have all these issues with the false gods, and he
yep,
describes it as oh, you worship God, that's really great, why don't you come with me and my son to our worship service and we'll show you how we worship. And you're like, oh, we're fallen men, we're sinful, we desire sin. It's no wonder Israel consistently went after false gods, because the way they worshiped them were through detestable practices.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't even know how to describe. We're getting off on a tangent here, but it's worth it because it's Dale Ralph Davis. His sense of humor is unique.
Yeah.
It's not dad jokes. It's something else entirely, but it's completely relatable. Yeah, really, I really enjoy it. But anyway, yeah. So I would highly recommend, if you don't want to read The Redeemed Man. I have a few copies of that book around here somewhere behind me on my shelves, but Dale Ralph Davis's commentaries are great fodder for just getting more biblical theology into the men in your church.
Definitely. So, when it comes to the actual organization, we're not an organization like an official PCA recognized thing. We want to work with the PCA. It's my goal to continue to do that and get closer to the actual denomination resources,
Right.
especially as the denomination is starting to realize our men's ministry aspect of CDM is really lacking.
Right.
We need more resources. We need more content and things
Yeah.
like that. So we hope to help fill that gap. If you want to be a member church, right? Basically, you just sign up and you say, hey, we were going to be a Men of the Covenant church. Obviously, we've got some stickers that we will send you at cost. We're
Right.
not collecting money. There's no dues, right? It just allows men to say, hey, we're part of something, right? You
Yeah.
can do that without being a part of this website, right? Or you can be a part of it and you can get the content, right? So
Right.
we'll have some stuff available on the website that's readily available, but a lot of it's going to start coming out via email. So if you're interested in more information, you can go on the website, sign up. There's a few teaching elders who are involved in this. It's not just me. There's a bunch of us kind of working on this behind the scenes.
Yeah.
We want to see men thrive in the PCA.
Yeah.
And the reason I am even spending time on this is because I want the PCA to be a denomination that my kids don't have to leave.
Yeah.
Right? I'm a mutt growing up as far as denominations go, but most recently I was part of the Reformed Church in America. And the
Mm.
Reformed Church in America is so far from God and from the Bible now, it's disgusting.
Yeah.
And me, the church I was a part of, and 4 other churches in Chicago, we all left the RCA together, joined the PCA together, and we want to see the PCA remain faithful, and that's the goal, right?
Yeah. A
So this is a way
denomination
to do
can't
that,
remain faithful without faithful men.
right?
It's
Exactly.
impossible. There's even a great example of this kind of thing, because people get offended. They're like, well, what about faithful women? Okay, great. There's a church 30 minutes away from me that's PCUSA. In pretty much all of their leadership are more aligned with the EPC or the PCA. The only reason they have female officers is because there wasn't enough faithful men willing and prepared to step into the vacuum.
Right.
Those women aren't hardcore feminists who think that men and women are the same. They're literally just exasperated, leaderless women who are like, well, I guess we have to do it.
Yep.
And I would be very curious to know how many other PCUSA churches are like that, where they're going, well, we'd love to be somewhere else, but we don't have literally the manpower to function as a church in a less egalitarian denomination.
Yeah. And I think one of the things that really helps us understand that that's actually a thing. It's not that they're hardcore liberal and don't care about the Bible, but there's a lack of men. We see that in the CRC, right? The Christian Reformed Church, right?
Mm-hmm.
They allow for women pastors, elders, and deacons. It's local to the synod or
Yeah.
the classes, right?
Yeah.
Some classes don't allow women to serve
Which
in
is
those
their
roles.
version of presbytery, right?
Right.
Okay.
They want to be Presbyterian. They want to be.
Right.
But you see recently that they've really just hammered down on fidelity to sexuality. And there are a lot of churches that have women officers that are hardcore against a non-biblical view of sexuality. And they are part of the movement that moved the CRC closer to the Bible as it was drifting away. And a lot of those churches that are against that are leaving. They're going to RCA or other denominations, whatever. But there are, I think, a lot of women out there that are saying, hey, there are no men who will stand up and lead. And thus, we have to.
Yeah. What a shame.
It's a shame.
Yeah, I think, and we're at a season of life in the PCA where there's all these, I won't mention names, but there's all these different organizations that are saying this is our vision for the PCA, and other groups are saying, well, this is our vision, our desire, and the devil's in the details, because there's a whole bunch of things being said that without saying anything. It's I get done reading 10 paragraphs of vision casting, and I'm going, I have no idea what you want. Like, just speak plainly. I joke that I'm, on the spectrum of, PCA pastors. There's guys like teaching elder Sean Morris and teaching elder Derek Bright, a couple of my peers, one of which is in the Presbytery, that are, PhD guys, brilliant. And then there's like all the way at the other end of the spectrum, there's me. I'm the knuckle dragging ex-jock. I'm the Neanderthal podcast host. Okay. But even I'm able to say, this is my vision for the PCA. We become more masculine. We become a denomination that men don't feel like they have to leave, because there's a lack of testosterone and Y chromosomes. It's very simple. Like we have to recover anthropology. That's it. That is one of my goals for the PCA, is that we recover a biblical understanding and a natural understanding of what men are and what women are. I don't, and why other people can't be, the fact that other people can't be that succinct and that clear about what they see what they think the problem is, and what they want to see change is the evidence for what I'm talking about. Yep. That we need, because that's a difference between men and women. Yes, men are much more typically, obviously there's a bell curve and there's a spectrum here, but typically men are more willing to be like, just the facts. Here's the facts. Here's what we need. And then sometimes you ask a woman for a question, and 30 minutes later she lands the plane, and you're like, I still have no idea what the answer to my question is. And that's where, I think it's just another evidence of effeminate behavior in the PCA, where we don't get clarity, and we don't have black and white direct answers to what we're for and what we're about and where we want to go.
Yeah. It's not hard.
No,
right?
It's
not hard. It shouldn't be hard to be clear, right? If somebody asks me, what's my vision for the PCA? My vision for the PCA is to remain faithful to the Bible, right? Grounded in the standards, and understand, like, a denomination that my kids don't have to leave, let alone me have to leave.
And if I can, there's obviously people that disagree with us about, women holding office and doing various things in the church. I'm really thankful for the presbyteries that finally had the spine to just come right out and say it with their overtures that we're going to be dealing with this summer at GA. Say, we want female deacons. We want to ordain women.
Yeah.
Or another one said, hey, we want the flexibility to do that. Yeah. We want each church to be able to decide for themselves. Thank you. Thank you for coming out and saying what you want, rather than this gobbledygook of, we want to stop sidelining women, and we want women to be able to step into the fullness of all that God. What are you saying? What do you want women to be able to do? And these brothers, even though I think their conclusion is wrong, they just came out and said what they wanted. Good for them.
Yeah.
Good for them.
Yeah. Honestly, it's frustrating when people are getting mad because a website is shining a light on what people are doing as regards, functional female officers.
Right.
And everyone's mad because you're starting to notice things. Stop noticing things. Yeah. Look, you want to have women deacons. Okay. send the overture. And that's
Yeah.
what they've done, right?
Yeah.
Don't pretend and don't do it behind the scenes and then start the process. No. That's not right.
Right.
That's not
Yeah.
right.
Yeah. And you know, people, the PCA, people are saying we want a big tent PCA. I'm going, the Westminster Assembly was a big tent. How much bigger it's a consensus document. How much bigger do you want it to get? You know, anyway, it just seems there's a way that we handle this and there's a way that we don't handle it. And I'm glad that we get to just handle it this summer like men and have direct open conversation and debate about it according to our principles and rules. And we'll see where we go. You know, I view it as a watershed moment in the PCA. If we are really men of integrity, you know, if the votes go one way, it will force some of us to make decisions in a certain direction, and if the votes go another way, it will force other brothers to have to make, if they want to be clear in their conscience and they have real convictions, it will force them to make decisions in another direction. And I think overall, for the masculinity of the denomination, that's good. It's 100%. It's good when we as men have to say, "Here I stand. I can do no other," you know, and that's what I think this summer is going to be for a lot of people.
Yeah. And, you know, I really hope that as we head into General Assembly here, as the overture list is, you know, topping, you know, 1,000 overtures. Right. We sent one up. My session did about language being able to use. We have some brothers in the PCA who are living by the letter of the law when it comes to the BCO. And well, they say, hey, the BCO does not say anything about deaconesses, so we can have deaconesses.
Right.
And I know we're supposed to live by the letter of the law. I get that. But there's a spirit of the law that is also there for us as Christians.
Right.
You know, Jesus modeled that for us when he says, you know, the letter of the law is, you know, you shall not kill. But I tell you, you've murdered in your heart if you hate your brother. Right. I'm paraphrasing. But essentially that it's not just the letter of the law, it's the spirit of the law. Right. And if it wasn't that way, then we would find the Westminster Larger Catechism on the commandments much shorter.
Yeah.
You see what I did there? Longer, shorter?
Yeah.
It'd be much shorter because there wouldn't be so much exposition. However, when you go into the Westminster Larger Catechism and you start looking at what does honor my father and mother actually mean, it's not the letter of the law. It's the spirit of the law too.
Right.
Yeah, you honor your father and your mother, but you know what? You also have to honor the institutions and governments that are over you.
Yeah.
Right.
They understood from other scriptures that, you know, who is my father and who is my mother, it has a much broader range than just my biological parents who raised me.
Yeah. Yeah. And anyone, right? I think the Westminster Larger says anyone who's above or below, treating them with dignity and respect, things like that.
Right. Yeah.
So it would be ludicrous to think that we would read a sentence in the BCO and go, oh, this means that we can do this as long as we don't use these names.
Yeah. I said this on the floor of my presbytery. I said, if you went to 100 college kids at the University of Tennessee or Maryville College or UTC, all of which are in our presbytery's bounds, and you were to say, here's what a deacon is, okay, and you explain what a deacon is, and then you were to ask them, now, what do you think a deaconess is? I think most of them would say, oh, it's just a female version of that deacon that you just described.
Right.
Because that suffix implicates the female of this, steward versus stewardess, right? Or stewardi, whatever we call the dudes on the planes. Flight attendant, I guess, is the neutral, inclusive term. You know, actor, actress. We understand this. And one brother's response, well, it's a good thing that the BCO is not up to an interpretation of 100 different college kids. And it's like, come on, man, you get the point that I'm making.
Yeah.
It's that common sense tells us that these words apply even to women. We're like, who in their right mind would think that we're not allowed to give these titles to unordained men, but we're allowed to give them to unordained women? That just seems like it's kind of like the old joke. You know, guys will walk into a privately owned business and it'll have the little the outline of like a Beretta 92, and it'll have like a red circle and then a slash to it. And that sign universally means no guns. Guys will go, oh, well, it's a good thing I'm carrying a 6 Sauer today. Obviously that sign isn't saying you have to carry something other than the Beretta 92. Right. It's saying no guns, right? That's what they're doing with the BCO.
Yep.
And it's not words with friends, it's words with frenemies. We're not treating our brothers like they're brothers.
Right.
We're treating this like a game of words. And it's incredibly frustrating. But hopefully this summer we'll get some clarity and we'll be able to move forward. But anyway,
the thing that we have to in the PCA as men, we need to understand, we have to be clear. We have to be able to succinctly say what we're for and what we're against. But essentially, we could pass every single prohibition and add it to the BCO, and our BCO can get miles and miles long. If we're not going to enforce it, then it doesn't matter what we put in there.
No, and that's exactly. I told someone the other day. I said I'm tempted to get up on the floor during these debates at GA and just say, brothers, none of this matters if we don't have the gumption and grit to actually enforce these rules.
Right.
And it seems like my experience is that it's almost about in order to bring discipline, it almost feels like the procedure matters more than the doctrine. And if we're going to have a healthy PCA moving forward, we can't just look at the procedure and say, well, they checked all the boxes, therefore this is okay. We have to be able to look and say, hey, they actually followed the doctrine. They actually followed our principles. We can't just say, well, they checked all the procedural boxes and therefore they're orthodox. That doesn't seem to be wise. That doesn't seem to be in favor of the peace and purity of the church.
No. And that's really what we have to keep in mind, is that our members take vows to the church when they join, right? And study the purity and peace of the church, right? Our teaching elders and ruling elders take vows to the peace and purity of the church.
Yeah.
Right? And so if we are trying to do something that is going to upset the peace and purity of the church, we got a problem.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
Telling men to study the redeemed man and study the confessions and learn more about their God, right?
Yeah.
There's nothing bad there. That's not, anyone who has a problem with that shouldn't be in the PCA.
Yeah.
But if you're going to say, hey, we're going to do this thing that is technically okay because the BCO doesn't say so, but that is going to cause lots of problems for brothers all across the denomination, right?
Yeah.
We got an issue there, right? I mean, I think that survey that came out, I'm not going to name it, but essentially that 9%, and even if you include errors, we'll say 7% of the PCA had some form of female functioning officer or whatever on their website.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a very small percentage.
Yeah.
In 2,000 or so churches, that's a very small percentage. However, these churches are finding a voice and they're being loud about it.
Yeah.
And we just need to be clear. We need to be men, right?
Yeah.
Paul tells us in 1 Corinthians, right? Act like men, right? If you have to hide what you're for, right? Then we got a problem. And that's why I agree with you. I'm so thankful that we got the overture out there. Let's deal with it and then let's move on.
And you think about it, I'm not, people will take exception to this comment, but that's okay. I'm used to that. You think about 5% of 2,000, 2,100 churches. I mean, that's big enough for 100 church denomination. That instantly, let's say you join, that denomination joins NAPARC, you're instantly the fourth biggest denomination in NAPARC.
Yeah.
And let's say that there was, let's say there's 3 times that many churches that want what these 100 churches are already doing, but they're more following the rules. Well, then all of a sudden you've got a 400 church denomination, and you're now the second biggest or third biggest denomination in NAPARC. And you can still get you still have the conservative, the clout of being a theological conservative, because I think that's what a lot of brothers want. And you basically free yourself from guys like us who are constantly telling you, no, can't do that. so I really, I don't understand. I really won't. I guess I should say I won't understand if these overtures to establish the ability to ordain deaconesses or female deacons, if those overtures fail, I don't understand how these brothers in good conscience can continue in a denomination any longer that will not allow them to ordain people that they believe are qualified to office. I mean, there are men in my church who I believe in 5 years will make really great officers. And if we were in a denomination that said you can't ordain those men, I don't know how long we would be able to have our consciences burdened by what I would perceive to be unbiblical grounds for denying these men the ability, and denying the whole congregation the ability to nominate, and elect and ordain these people to office. Right? I mean, does that make sense? Like, I don't know how you could continue if you say you love women and you believe women should be ordained, and the denomination you're in says no. How can you continue to look at these women and look at them in the face and say, no, we're not going, we have to stick it out here?
Well, and we do love women.
Yeah.
Just to be clear.
We do. We just have you and I have a different view of what their role is in the home and society and the church and so on and so forth.
I think the Bible makes that clear.
Yeah.
And to be fair, some of these brothers will say the Bible makes it clear about Phoebe. And I would maintain that I think the Bible's clear about Phoebe, but to say that Phoebe was a female ordained capital D deacon, that's not clear.
Yeah. It's funny, the guys that make the Phoebe argument, they never, on their websites, they never have Jesus as a deacon, and they never have the civil magistrates in their area as deacons.
Yeah.
I've always thought that was fascinating, but anyway, so brother, if we want to get involved with Men of the Covenant, if we want to be, if a local church or session wants to get involved in this, give us action points. What do we need to do?
Yeah. Again, this is not a podcast episode on why the PCA shouldn't have women deacons. It seems like
correct.
A lot of podcasts are going that way, but that's okay. We're here to talk about men. So you can head over to menofthecovenant.org, right? You can see, how the denomination formed, right? What our distinctives, our values are, foundation in the word, everything that's normal for a PCA church. And then you can go to start your group. And you can contact us. You put your name, your email there, and then we'll start sending you stuff. You'll get a call or an email from one of the guys that we're working together with. And again, you could do this and continue everything you're doing if it's working really well. But if it's not working, let's talk, because we want to help you, right? It's a very simple. I mean, we've already outlined the simplicity of it, but it's 4 steps, right? You identify a leader. And you pick a book that you're going to study, right? We recommend The Redeemed Man. Second, you set a date and a time for meeting. Invite the men of your church and their sons. We recommend 7 years or older. And third, you follow the simple framework. You have fellowship. You have some kind of food, some kind of drink, right? It doesn't have to be a meal. You don't have to spend tons of money. Something. Prayer, singing, study. And then fourth, repeat. You do it again. Right.
Yep.
Monthly is at least monthly is good. Right. Some guys do weekly if they've got a small enough group. I know, like you said, the coffee with Calvin, that keep doing what you're doing. If it's working, if it's not working, let's talk, because we've got a lot of great resources. We're putting out more and more content to help churches. So go to the website, sign up, and let us know you want to be a member church, and we'll put you on the website.
Awesome. Thanks, Ken. Appreciate your time today. And hopefully you'll see your numbers grow over the course of the next couple of years. And hopefully this will bear lots of positive fruit in the PCA for our good and for God's glory. Thanks for your time, brother.
Yeah, thank you, brother.